however urgent the work may be, I don't think you're going to get rid of me before I have my lunch. So you'll see me for a while longer. But the president, the newly elected president of the SKAL, and the outgoing president, the president of the Asian chapter, all the members, and the guests who have come to this meeting today. First of all, I congratulate SKAL for successfully completing their annual general meeting without beating each other up and throwing chairs at each other, unlike what it would have been at one of our party meetings. But thank you for having me here. My nephew was helping me with the speech, and he was telling me that we should talk about tourism, but I thought I should go back a little into the difficulty, what got us into this difficulty, or where we started. First of all, I should also thank all of you for having weathered that beating. You have got beat about from time to time during the LTT war. The tourism sector suffered from time to time. Then came tsunami, then came a few other issues, and in the more recent past, it was the Easter attacks, followed by COVID, followed by the economic crisis. I don't think there's any other sector that has got affected directly as much as the tourism sector. But you have held out, you've had confidence that it will rebound. And this time around, I know natural disasters will hit us from time to time, but we have to build it to a point that we are resilient and we stay ready for business through anything. We cannot go back to another economic crisis. And that is what we are trying to have for this country. If you go back to May of 2022, we had the long lines for gas, for petrol. There was a shortage of medicine. It was a really bad time. You would come to, after being in the line for 2 days, come near the pump and the fuel would end and you would not know when it will come again. You're not sure whether to stay for another week in line, how you survive that, or whether to go back and give up. Similar with gas, it was worrisome about the medicine, and those are only a few of the issues we had. I remember how difficult it was to get food. Milk food was a problem. Families that had children had severe difficulties, and that's where we started. When we took over, we were not sure whether the banks would be able to survive the next day. But President Wickremesinghe came in. First thing he did was he ensured that law and order prevailed. Within 2 days, we had law and order nearly back to normal. And that was the start. Then we started ensuring that the banks don't collapse, and we started getting into securing the fuel, the gas, and the medicine. If you take gas, we had only one supplier. That supplier didn't want to touch us again. Even if we found the money, they didn't want to touch us because they had so many worries about supplying to Sri Lanka. So we had to convince them. Then we had to find the rupees and we had to find the dollars. We had to speak to the exporters. Tourism industry had no money. The exporters had some dollars, which when brought back was converted into rupees, but some of them had a few more dollars outside. We had to convince them to bring them in and put together these millions of dollars that you need for the gas and the petrol. Petrol and diesel, we had outstanding bills of about $600 million. Nobody wanted to touch us. We had to convince everybody again that we will be true to our word. And it was the standing that the president had in the world that we managed to do that. And we had an agriculture industry which had collapsed because of the fertilizer policy that the previous government had. We had no rupees in the system, leave alone dollars, again because of the revenue policy that the previous government had. So we had to rectify those two immediately to be able to move forward. So we appealed to our friendly countries, the Food and Agriculture Organization, who's having an event right now in Sri Lanka. They came forward with fertilizer. The US came forward with fertilizer. Japan came forward with various assistance. The World Bank and ADB stood by us. They reorganized the loans, or there was a word they used, I'm forgetting it now. Sorry? Restructured. Yes, restructured. There was another word that they would use. We would, you know what, some money that was set aside for capital was used for medicine or for fuel or for fertilizer. Not for fuel. It was for fertilizer and things like that. So we targeted agriculture. We got the a very successful Yalla season. So that eased some of the food issues. So one by one, we went at it. We started paying up our bills on the medicine side. Our suppliers were flat on their faces because they hadn't been paid billions of rupees. So you had to pay them for them to be able to even think about continuing to supply us. Then they had to go out and find the dollars. But we managed that. And in the meantime, parallelly, we started talking to the IMF because we believed, given the situation we were in, that was the only way out. And that was where we got the breakthrough. The IMF, we were able to convince that we will stick to a program. This is the 17th IMF program that we embarked on. Every other one of them fell on the roadside. So it was not easy. But we stood our ground. It was very hard for the people when the taxes went up, when the VAT had to be introduced, or the VAT had to be increased and then introduced on other items that had never had VAT previously. The people stood by us initially. As it went on a little longer, of course, as things became more and more difficult for them, they started becoming anxious, like most of you have become. But if we don't do this, if we don't stick to this path, what's our option? No other party or no other leader has come up with an alternative. So we are convinced that this is the path and that we stay this path and we will come out of this crisis and it will become easier for the people. So we had the IMF reforms, which was supported also by the World Bank and ADB. They were fairly comprehensive. These are things that governments had been afraid to do for decades for the fear of losing votes at elections. But these are things that we need to do as a country to move forward in the world and to bring in the transparency, to bring in the systems that are comfortable with anybody who wants to do business with us, even a tourist who would want to come here. We undertook those. This included certain laws that were critical. This included also setting some of the government systems right. Not everything is complete. There's a lot more to be done. But some of the critical things were, the laws were, one of them was the Central Bank Act. So it makes the central bank independent of the government and follow the right practices so that they don't no government will drag the country down financially again. This is a very hard call because when you do that, when you're in the middle of a crisis, you're not able to access those funds if you run into a problem during the recovery process. Say you need to, in an emergency, there has to be some money printing for you to survive, or you need to take an overdraft from a bank. It doesn't allow you to change certain limits. or it doesn't allow you to depend on the central bank for money printing. So we had to take that risk, and we had to be sure that we can withstand it. Otherwise, suddenly, 1 month we may not be able to pay the government servants' salaries or do the medicine imports or something. But we took that call, and that made a hell of a difference in the international fora. We started getting a lot more support after that. And we went into various programs, including asking the IMF to come and do a governance diagnostics review on Sri Lanka. This is asking for trouble. I mean, it is asking for a lot of trouble. Because when they come and do that, they will point out where the issues are, and they will tell you, we need to resolve these, and we will have to get that into the program. And that is what we had to do, and we said, yes, we'll do it. And we got it into the program. So things like anti-corruption, the laws are at a very high standard, and some of the things that follow up, like the asset declarations, how they will be available to the public on the internet, and things like that are new things that no other country in this part of the world has done yet. But we opted to do it. It brings danger upon the politicians also, because it will highlight some of where their houses are and things like that. But these are things we chose to do because we want to set this right for the people. We want to do away with those bad feelings between the governments and the people. And the bad feelings the international has about Sri Lanka. You look at what happened with the LRT. Look at what we wanted to do, a LRT project. We signed the MOU. We were in the middle of a feasibility study. A lot of money was spent on it by the company that was here. Government changes, they are sent away packing, feasibility not paid for, 4 billion rupees due to them. We signed a memorandum of understanding with two governments, India and Japan, on developing the East Container Terminal, not selling it, just operating it with them and using that money to develop it. Ports Authority was going to own it. The MOU was for the operating company, of which 51% is going to be owned by the Ports Authority. 49 only was going to be the others. The previous agreements were, I think, 90% had been given to the operator. But this is a different agreement, very good for Sri Lanka. But when the new government came, it was cancelled, and a different project embarked upon. So governments lost faith with us, leave alone companies in the international market. So we had to renew all that faith in us. And we started going around the world talking to them, and we started getting support. And as the crisis eased, the world leaders started saying, we are amazed at the recovery. Jaishankar is External Affairs Minister of India, the Honorable Jaishankar. He says that Sri Lanka is one of the best places to travel to now. Then Donald Lu, who's the Assistant Secretary of State in the US, says that he's amazed by the recovery Sri Lanka has made, and that it's an example for any other country. So this is what the world leaders think of it. But during this hard time, we had to also look after the people. Some of the people, the ones who got affected worst, were those who were Samurudhi beneficiaries and the lower end. And we had to put them on social welfare. We devised a new system. It was called Aswasuma. It had a new name. But instead of giving them 2,000 rupees a month or 3,000 rupees a month, we calculated what they may need to pay their electricity bill, their water bill, get the food, education. And we came up with a number that would work. So it went up to 15,000 rupees. There were no intermediaries. They could apply. Then they were evaluated. And if they fell within the system, and they applied online on an app. And the app included a picture of the house and all of that. And if they fell within the categories, they would get this money remitted to their bank account. So no intermediaries. You don't have to go polish some officer's floor to get the money. So we did away with all those intermediary issues. We're going one step further. When the SLUDI, which is the digital platform with the unique digital ID for Sri Lankan citizens, comes through, we will have other interoperable apps that will connect through. And let's say the Aswasuma beneficiary will receive the money not to the bank account, but into a wallet. And that wallet will say you have a maximum of 600 that you can pay for your electricity bill. You have a maximum of something that you can pay elsewhere. You can't take the money and buy a bottle of liquor somewhere. The outlets will be marked. But for groceries, you can go even to the fullest. So this is where we're trying to go. It's just one example that I'm giving. Fertilizer, again, it will be cash subsidy. So eventually, it will come to a wallet. Then you cannot take the cash and go and do something else with it. You will have to go to a fertilizer supplier who's on the system and use the wallet to buy the fertilizer. Of course, you can go and sell the fertilizer, but at least you minimize the leakages. So we brought in lots of other things. We've developed ITMIS, that's a government accounting system. We brought all the government departments online. We still got a few more to do, but we brought 168 government departments out of the 171 on board already. I think it's the Sri Lanka Police, which is a large number, and education, which is a large number of schools that we haven't been able to bring on yet, but that will also be completed by end of March. So like that, we're getting everything ready to run on this digital platform. Digitalization will be the next big mover for us. It'll make things very transparent for all of you, anybody who comes here. So all of this helped us to stabilize our position. We are on a good wicket, but the people are still struggling because during the crisis, the rupee depreciated. Driving costs are living up, not 2 times, 3 times. But income didn't go up. The government servants were given a 10,000 rupee increase. Please don't let me stop you from eating. They can continue to serve you. I'll keep talking, and I'll catch up when I sit down. Thank you. So the people's incomes didn't increase. The government servants got a 10,000 rupee increase, which is really nothing. The rest of the private sector, some who were able to, supported. In the tourism industry, of course, the service charge would go up a little, but most people are struggling. So next thing is we have to increase the people's income. And that is why we need to stay on track. There's a lot of things we need to do. We need to continue the reform process. We need to continue to ensure that our revenue collection is good. We're bringing the monetary board for that. They will bring all the 3 revenue agencies, excise, income tax, and customs under one. They'll function as different entities, but it'll come under one overarching umbrella. We will digitize that as well, minimizing human intervention. And also, we have to understand the cycle here. Now, you take excise, for example. We increase the excise rate very heavily because IMF works on formulas. They plug it into the scenarios and they work on these formulas. So when you have to find a shortfall, they'll increase something. So excise went up. They wanted to increase it 40% last year. And then tag it to cost of living from this year. So last year, we argued that if you do that, there'll be a negative effect, but they insisted and we went into 220% increases beginning of the year and middle of the year. But what happened there? The illicit market took off. Everybody started going for the kasipu. Government doesn't get any revenue from that, and the product that the people get out is also dangerous. The other thing is, when you don't have the right network of outlets, again, that also is a problem. So those are all things you have to work in parallel. You have to find where the gaps are and plug those gaps with outlets. So we spoke to the Sangha, we spoke to the church and said, these are things that we will have to do. We will do it scientifically, though. It won't be for political purposes. It will be for to make it easier for the people as well as for revenue collection. I know it's not a nice thing to talk about these, but these are all things that when you run government, you have to streamline, because otherwise the effect will be far more negative if you don't do it. People will suffer at the end of it. So we have to make certain adjustments as we go along, and we will make those adjustments and ensure that the revenue collection is maximized without hurting the people continuously. We had to hurt people initially when we increased it considerably. But over a period of time, when collection improves, our strategies improve, we are hoping we can bring the VAT down. We are hoping that the brackets can be brought down. And we are fairly sure we will be able to do that. We ensured the banks didn't collapse. The World Bank and the IMF helped us with technical advice. They've all stood by us with technical advice. Then they also helped us with a recapitalization program. We did all that. Because if we want to go into the growth stage means continuing the reforms, means a lot of bills that need to be brought in still. I'll just give you a little rundown. I have lots of information. So we brought the Central Bank of Sri Lanka Act, the Betting and Gaming Act, we brought anti-corruption, and we have on the pipeline some critical bills. One is the Public Debt Management Law, the Public-Private Partnership Law, and the Public Commercial Business Act. We're bringing this as one omnibus law called the Public Financial Management Law. So we'll lump it together and bring it because they're all on the similar track. Then the second one is Omnibus 2 will be the Sri Lanka Economic Transformation Law, which will have the investment law, which will bring the BOI, the EDB, and the IDB together. All those laws will be brought together and will have the ease of doing business also. So this will encourage investment in Sri Lanka. And this will be backed by all the trade agreements that we are signing. We signed one with Thailand. We are working on the Indian one, the ETCA. We have also applied for a multilateral one, which is the RCEP, and most of the countries have said they like to support us. They are working on how to bring in new members. Once they go through that, they will consider our application. But they're all, they want to have us. This omnibus law will also have the economic zones law. That will be a law that governs all the economic zones. They will manage the economic zones. The National Productivity Commission Act, the Office for International Trade, and the Institute for Economics and Trade Act. So all of these will streamline us. Then there'll be another one, the Omnibus 3, that will be the Gender Equality Bills, which will have the Gender Equality Bill, the National Commission on Women's Act, and the Gender Budgeting Bill. So these are all, far-sighted bills that are coming in that will improve our standing in the world, as well as bring in the confidence to come in here. So all of this we have to do, but there's one other thing that we had to finish. That is a restructuring. Because that's when we are declared no longer bankrupt. And that's when Japan will come back in. They're waiting to come back. The JICA chairman was here, the president, waiting to start on the airport, waiting to start on the LRT, maybe the East Container Terminal again. Maybe. But they're waiting. As soon as the restructuring is complete, they will come in. So what does that entail? Are you interested? Do you want to know? Am I boring you? I can give you a quick rundown. There are two sectors we have to finish still. The official bilateral creditors, they are in two lots. One is under the Paris Club, or what they call the Official Creditor Committee. All the bilateral creditors have come in there, and India is outside it but following them. And so are Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iran, but they will follow them. Then there's China, who's separately, but China, the Exim Bank of China, who's the single largest creditor to Sri Lanka, 4.2 billion US dollars. We achieved an agreement in principle on debt treatment terms with them. And this is done back in 23, the end of 23. Then the creditor committee has reached an agreement in principle on debt treatment terms. They have a debt stock totaling about $5.9 billion. The agreed upon terms are currently being formalized into an MOU between the government of Sri Lanka and the OCC, and it will be implemented even through bilateral agreements. But once the MOU is signed, we are open for business again. But then you have to go into each one separately and sign later on. So I think these are all now coming up fairly soon. And then we have to tackle the external commercial creditors, the other creditors, and those are also on track. So we have some steps to go through. There is a lot of back and forth, but it'll also come on track. So then we're no longer bankrupt, and that will also help our growth strategy. What are the areas of growth that we are working on? Y'all, tourism, that's a big one, and that's a low-hanging fruit for us. And you'll have done wonders. And we're very thankful to you because you come back up to 1.5 million last year, and I think the numbers are 200,000 in January, am I correct? Oh, yeah, something like that, something phenomenal. Let's see, 208,000 arrivals in January. So we are going back to the 2017 numbers. But that's not where we want to be. We want to be beyond that. We want to be at 5, not 2.5 million. We want to be at 5 million. And we don't want to be at 5 million with $100 a night spend. We want to be at 5 million with maybe 2.5 million at $100 a night spend, but the other 2.5 million at up to $500 a night spend. So that's what we are trying to target. So there's a committee a multi-sectoral committee that has been brought in. I've sat in on some meetings with them. Shiromal is on that committee. I mean, stunning work that they do. One of the results was the Peco Trail. And we've come in the top 20 coolest places to be or something like that this year. I mean, that's phenomenal. And so we need to grow that. Then the agriculture sector, modernizing agriculture. So we're working on really doing, it's not just the improving the seed technology and things like that, but it's also bringing in other technology to make it easy. Also collecting the data and having it available to the farmers. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is helping us through a program called IDAT to bring all this data together and have the officials and the farmers on an app have access to it so that everything they need to know from what is the disease that's hit their plants, when will the rains come, how much fertilizer to put considering all the external factors, all of that will be available to them using this technology. So we're really pushing it to the next level. We want to, in rice cultivation, we had about 4 metric tons a hectare at the moment. We want to double that to 8. But some areas can even go up to 12 to 14 metric tons. You do that, not only are you going to be self-sufficient, we can grow the right kinds of rice to export, but it's not only that. You can move some of the fields away from rice into other areas of agriculture. We can bring in other products. Then we have the manufacturing industry we want to push through the trade agreements and the industrial zones or the investment zones. But there's one other thing that will help us there. That is all the renewable energy that we have. We have about 80,000 megawatts available, but it can even be more. Some of the studies say it can be about 100,000 megawatts more than that. This is solar power, which is rooftop, on ground, on reservoirs. Then there is wind, which will be onshore and offshore. Offshore will be a little more expensive. People are still not eager to go there. They want to first use the onshore part, but that is also potential. Bring the price of energy down for the people, as well as we'll have a huge excess. We have to attract manufacturing in here, and then we'll have an excess to sell as well. Maybe we are working on a grid connection with India. Discussion started in 1970s, but this time we're really going to get it done. It's progressed, and we're going. But that will be a small pipeline, and new technologies like converting to green hydrogen will give us more opportunity to export this energy. But try to use most of it here in manufacturing zones. That will give us employment, it will give us foreign currency. So those are all things that need work, and we're bringing in the reforms to be able to do that. Then a logistics hub. All of these things are interconnected. The port of Colombo, Hambantota. But Colombo, if you take, right now what you see here is only the South Harbor. That's all we have. And it's within the South Harbor you have the Jaya Container Terminal and South Asia Gateway Terminal, which is a shallow water port. And then on the other side you have CICT that's functioning, which is a deep water port. East Container Terminal is the SLPS1, which is again a deep water port. And West Container Terminal, which is coming up with Adani's. And we'll have an extension as well. That will add a huge handling capacity. But on the northern end, north of the Kalani River, we're proposing the North Port, which will have double the capacity of handling TEUs than the South Port. This is all huge potential. We have to work towards this, which is why we cannot go back, and we have to stay this path. I talked about renewable energy, and whilst doing all of this, we're also trying to, we have the India connectivity program, which I talked about with the grid connection. We'll have a pipeline also coming, bringing fuel. It'll work both ways. So if you eventually have a refinery in Trincomalee, we'll be able to push back to India as well, or export. But these are all things that we have to see. I mean, is there such a demand that will help? But we are setting up to be able to do that. But whilst doing all of this, we are also doing other things like the President's Urumea program. Urumea is giving the people title to the lands that they've lived on or they've cultivated for 3, 4, 5 generations. And giving title to land is another economy that you're kickstarting. They will be able to mortgage it, they'll be able to sell it and move. It just opens up a completely new economy. So these are just some of the areas of growth that I touched on. Along that, we will also work on improving our law and order situation here. We have a drug program that is being driven not just in the city, but we also, through our maritime cooperation, we are working on the ocean as well to ensure that there are no big hauls that come into the country or even pass our waters. Now, what are we doing for tourism? I had a brief touch on it, but tourism is one of our critical areas. It's low-hanging. It was the first one to start giving us foreign currency after the crisis. People didn't want to bring their money here. The workers didn't bring it in. It was only after tourism kicked in, money started coming in that eased our burdens on the foreign currency front. And then, because the rupee stabilized, our foreign workers also started remitting the money back, because there's no point now sending it through other. So we have to work at it. And the president himself is very passionate on it, so I dare not say too much on what he's trying to do with tourism. Shrimal knows how passionate he is about it. He spent last weekend touring the south without any of us, just to go and have a look at it himself and have a first-hand experience. And I think he has done well, because I mean, usually I only keep getting bashed, but this time we got a lot of positive comments from all walks of life, all walks of life. And we had the Gaul Lit Fest that did well, so we need lots of events. The government is supporting the events, but we want you all to take them over. And that's, eventually you all will have to, I mean, the people have to run this country. We will come up with the policy, we'll have the structures in place, we'll make sure that they're up to date so that you all can function within it. We'll keep talking to you. You have to help us to keep the country moving up, and you have to help us to talk to the people who have to be explained what we're trying to do. So I'm open for questions. Anything you want to know, I'm happy to answer. But I finally wanted to say that we want to ensure that now I wrote it down and came, but can't find the piece of paper. Let me see. I wasn't. What SKAL stands for? SKAL. SKAL stands for, I know it ends with happiness. That's what we're trying to get to. Good health, friendship, long life, and happiness. That's what we want all of you to have. And we must all get together to work towards that. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I bored you.